Good morning, class. Welcome to 8th grade history. I am Mr. Carpenter, and today we're going to be talking about 2 minutes and 272 words. Now, does anybody in this room think if anything of importance can be said in that amount of time? 2 minutes is only 120 seconds. Anybody? Well, there was one such event, a speech given by Mr. Lincoln when they were dedicating the cemetery at Gettysburg as a national cemetery. It was 2 minutes and 272 words. Now, yesterday we talked about Gettysburg's importance in the Civil War, how the war itself had tore the nation in half, how Gettysburg was an important turning point in the war that gave the Union the advantage. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pass out this piece of paper, and I want you to fold it in half. I want this part with all the wording on it to face you on your desk. Okay? And while we're listening to the Gettysburg Address, what I want to do is ask you what you think Lincoln's main point was. Okay? So let's listen to the address, and then we'll discuss it afterwards. We're having a little bit of difficulties with YouTube, so.
The President of the United States! Resistance to the war was growing. Mr. Lincoln needed to reinvigorate the people, to explain to them, and perhaps himself, why this endless plague of war must continue.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. We cannot consecrate. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Now, it's important to realize that Mr. Lincoln didn't think that these words would be remembered. And it turns out to be one of his most important speeches, one of the most important speeches in our country's history. Now, on your paper that has the speech, I want you to get out your yellow, orange, and green highlighters. If you'll go ahead and do that right now, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with those. Okay. So with the yellow, I want you to highlight the vocabulary words. And those words are the ones that are behind me here. I also want you to, in orange, the repeated words. And highlight in green, the impactful words or phrases are the ones that you believe are the ones that are impactful. Now, I had a question earlier to want to know how long SCORE was. SCORE is 20 years. So you're talking 87 years, 4 score and 7 years ago. So that's what that means. So go ahead and get started on doing this, highlighting the words, and then we're going to go ahead and go through some of the words together. All right. So the first word we're going to come across is conceive. That means to form an idea. Now, Mr. Lincoln chose his words carefully, and they did talk differently back then. Today, I'm sure the speech would be, I've seen copies of how it was translated in today's terminology. So it would be different. The next word, proposition. That's a suggestion that something be done or thought about. Now, who can tell me what the next word is? Engaged. That's correct. To be occupied with. The word endure, which is the next one, means to continue or to last. So you can see that Mr. Lincoln was clearly choosing his words carefully. Who can tell me what consecrate is? Anybody? Right. To declare sacred. That's correct. So he had talked about consecrate the land that they couldn't do it, that it's already been consecrated because they gave their life on that battlefield, and that's how it was consecrated. Anybody know what hallow means? Hallow means to honor as holy or sacred. And when you're at that battlefield, you feel it's hallowed ground. You feel it's sacred. It's just got a vibe to it. Detract. Anybody know what detract is? Okay. To take away from, to draw attention away from? Sure. That's good. Okay. So Mr. Lincoln didn't want to detract from those giving their life by having this little ceremony. Devotion means dedication. If you're devoted to something, then you are all in for it. You're all the way with it. You're going to see it to the end. Who can tell me what vain is? Without real value. And the word perish means to pass away or disappear. So, now that you're highlighting your words, look at this. Look at this speech. Let's talk about the first little section of it. 87 years ago. We just talked about how long that is. Anybody? 87 years, right? Okay. Our forefathers, which is George Washington, well, not George Washington, really, because he didn't sign the Declaration of Independence, but Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, those people were the ones who wrote the Constitution and signed it. John Hancock. Everybody's heard of John Hancock? That's a signature. He had a really flamboyant signature. Now, can anybody discuss the second paragraph we have here? Now we are engaged in the Great Civil War. Can anybody tell me what that means? We've got the word engaged, to be occupied with. Great. That means that we're in the middle of a war. Okay? And it says, we are met on a great battlefield of that war. So, Gettysburg is that battlefield. In the next paragraph, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Does anybody understand what that means? That means by the ceremony they're having, they can't consecrate it. It has been, as we spoke earlier, it's been consecrated by their death already. So, now that you have your vocabulary words, and you marked all your repeated words and impactful words, and we've looked over the speech, and we've seen some really great words and phrases like unfinished work, and it is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, and government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Does anybody know what that comes from? Right, the Constitution. So what I'd like for you to do now is turn your paper over with a blank side. Give me your interpretation. You've heard some of the things that I've said of my interpretation. Now give me yours. Tell me what each paragraph means to you in your words. Okay? And then when we're finished, you can turn those all in, and then we'll go on to our next lesson. Thank you.
I would